Welcome to our webinar on managing your business in uncertain times due to the coronavirus. Your presenters are Andrew Rose and David Duffy.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining, everybody. Today is for us an opportunity to share with you some of the stories that we've seen from talking to our clients and the processes we've been taking them through in what is certainly a very, very uncertain time at the moment. The format today is we're going to, as quickly as possible, without going too quickly, is to take you through the following agenda. One, to look at what is the story, why is there so much fuss about COVID-19, and what is the flattening of the curve, the current business impact we're seeing in our region, what phases do we anticipate business are going to go through, what activities do you as a leader do you think that need to do with your business, our methodology in helping businesses, the two-stage process that we take people through in scenario planning and then looking at our survival kit, and then talking about your short-term objectives, and we're going to finish talking about the funding announcement and questions that you may wish to have. That's the format which we had to go through. Andrew and I are going to swap between each other as we go through the presentation. So first of all, who's Business DNA, for those of you who don't know, and what do we do, and how come we're talking in this space? So Andrew, do you want to give us everybody a bit of an introduction to Business DNA?
Business DNA is basically a business that has been going around now for about 5 years, and that was fallen out from a previous business called Principal Focus. We basically aim to assist our clients, basically help them run their business and set out and achieve their goals and where they're trying to get to with their business and that side of it. We do from the general accounting compliance work all the way up to strategic level, strategic financial management, and a range of different services at that side of it, with a range of customers ranging from your sole traders and small business up to businesses that got, $40, $50 million turnover businesses. Our location generally covers us anywhere from the central west out into the western region of New South Wales, and we largely primarily concentrate on family businesses and small not corporately owned, but small businesses that are owned with multiple owners also in that regard.
Okay, thank you. What's going on with the COVID-19 and why is there so much fuss? So you'll see a reference to Emerging Futures, the website down below, and these guys run some pretty good commentary on actually what's going on. What's interesting about the graph in front of you is, and we keep hearing about the bell-shaped curve, is that the green line is the capacity of the health system to actually handle the number of complaints. So unless the government imposes these restrictions on isolation and restricting people from doing business, then the likely scenario, which they've seen in quite a number of countries around the world, is the big yellow bulge. And what all this restriction of our business activity, which is having a devastating effect on many businesses, is all about trying to make sure we don't have this explosion of people in our medical system and our medical system fall over. And the cost to the economy would be greater than what the government is currently expecting they're paying. So what's the real impact likely to be? They predict that what will actually happen, and you'll note down on the bottom of this graph that there are days out to 251 days, 251 days. But what they expect will happen is there'll be a surge, which we're currently in the middle of at the moment. We seem to be not rising at the same level of what's being predicted by that graph. By the way, the graph doesn't represent Australian numbers. It's just an indication of the likely trends. And we're actually not reaching the peak that is shown in this likely scenario. But I think what the impact is the fact that this is going to be around with us for a fair while. And so therefore we've got to develop strategies that help us get our businesses through this environment where the current level of restrictions are going to be are restrictive on us, but we could expect other outbreaks over the next 3 to 6 months. So I think many businesses fall into this this graph of this image of this poor fellow here. The economy is going against us. Governments are stepping in. Competition, in some cases, is going hard at it. Customers are certainly lost faith or withdrawn and followed the instructions of staying at home and aren't spending money unless you're selling toilet paper and tissues and those sorts of things. I hear that our big alcohol distributors are also now restricting the amount of alcohol people can take home because people are hoarding those resources as well. So not many businesses feel like they're in control. However, we think there are quite a number of situations that are going on for businesses. So Andrew, you might go through this slide and talk about how we see the current impact.
Probably what we have at the moment is probably businesses in different stages and the current impacts that it's having on. There's some businesses, no doubt, are able to actually grow and boom through this period and adjust accordingly through it. We've got some businesses that really haven't had much of an impact on them. Yes, they might have to have clients working from home, but they've, sorry, not clients, staff working from home, but generally they've been able to pretty well continue as normal, or, you know, they're not at the present time of where we're at in that stages. Where that goes to and how that changes is probably going to also depend on what their customer base is and what that's going to look like down that time. We have probably a fair few clients that are in this stage at the moment too, where the uncertainty, where are we going with our business? Where's it heading? Is the government going to actually shut down that we now can't do certain things further, which is going to affect our, you know, our supply chain, and therefore we really don't know what we can do. A lot of things still out of our control, and, you know, I think that's probably a lot of where people are the most worried in that regard in some ways. We've got some that are dramatically affected, virtually to the ones that have basically been forced to close in that regard. Each have got their own, you know, anyone who now has been forced to close, they've probably already done a lot of the major steps that they need to do that, but there's still a lot of issues, a lot of things they need to happen and move with that forced to close. Where if they've been dramatically affected, they're probably sitting back going, how long can I continue to trade for? Can I continue to trade, or are there other sources of income that I can actually receive or change my business model to do it all? So we're sort of seeing businesses in different stages of how it's currently impacting. By the day, by the week, they may change through some of those different areas, and each of them probably are dealing with things in different ways at this point in time, and probably don't have, some have more urgency, others have less urgency in how they're handling the matters at the time. In that regard.
Quite interesting to look at our local economy. Anybody who is servicing agriculture at the moment is probably, in some cases, going through a boom because farming is not stopping. And those people who are servicing major infrastructure projects like the Inland Rail, or involved in transport and getting things to supermarkets or big suppliers, they're also really working very hard. But there's some uncertainty as to how long that's going to continue for them. So in lots of ways, our businesses are in the regional areas are a little bit more insulated than certainly the metropolitan businesses who have got a very, very high service and domestic retail focus. And so in some ways, we're going to only have some sectors of our community that are going to be affected.
Whereas we also then have the sectors that are fully affected, and, you know, we've got areas that have had to shut down, unfortunately.
Yeah. One of the things that's really unusual about this time is, and how it's affecting different businesses, is that the government has really stepped in and exercising a high degree of control, and therefore businesses are facing a lot of uncertainty because they just don't know where they stand today. For example, lots of medical professionals are allowed to continue to trade, yet dentists aren't. We want pharmacists, they're going to have very low government control. They're allowed to stay open for longer hours so they can supply a broader range of products. So for them, they can actually build demand and increase their capacity because they're under lower restraints than what the government is placing on them. Yet the domestic area of retail sales where people are being sent home. Their customers are being told by the government not to come and see them, and so they're forced to tighten their belts, and we're seeing lots of our major suppliers and lots of our local retailers having to close their businesses. Anybody who's servicing manufacturing, of course, they're not manufacturing, building and construction, their businesses are continuing to travel along as normal.
Yeah,
So,
I had a hairdresser there today. I was just going to note that I was talking to on that side of it, and basically, you know, they've gone through that stage where, you know, they can only service customers for half an hour. Now that's been re-lifted, but they've got mixed messages about when people can actually go outside. It's, you know, only for essential items and things like that, but as hairdressing being put into that category. So you've got all those issues of people having the flow-on effect from the government influence, but people are creating that uncertainty whether they can or can't.
So we see there's a number of phases business is going to go through. We're in phase one at the moment. High uncertainty, high volatility. A lot of the volatility is being caused by government decisions and lack of confidence in the market as to who's allowed to go to work and who's not allowed to go to work. Where is that going to be? And we probably expect this is going to be around for the next 2 months until they know that they've got the virus under control and the spread of it is restricted. Then what we'll probably see is the government will be reluctant to release people to the marketplace. And so therefore we can see restrictions on people's business activities being sitting in a bit of a lull for probably 3 to 6 months after that. Now, that doesn't mean business won't be allowed to continue, but if any outbreak pops up, then we're likely to have the brakes re-put on us, but we won't be encouraged to go hell for leather like we expect. And then probably after 6 months, then we see a transition to recovery. And really, this is a great opportunity for us to start thinking in advance. So what we did was, based on our conversations with customers, we've identified what they're going to do over these 3 phases. Currently, and I think I'm not going to go through all the points here, but currently we've got a whole heap of people who are, every day is different. They're firefighting, there's knee-jerk reactions, and usually based on shallow thinking. And I'm not saying they're not considering what they're doing, but they have to deal with the emergency of the situation now rather than where they'd like their business to be going in the long term. So they're having to make short-term compromises quickly to react to changing sales and behaviour and different government decisions. And, you know, there's lots of confusion, lots of stress, lots of high emotion. Where we hope, and lots of strategy and a lot of work that needs to be done right now, and lots of people needing to talk. Certainly Andrew and I, our phones have been running hot for about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks now, where people just not sure about what's the right decision and having to adopt new technologies. My comment that one of the things I would stress here is there's a big push to push everybody online to do online sales. Fortunately for some, that's a real option, but many businesses, their businesses are either too big, they've got too big a product range, they don't have the expertise inside their businesses or systems, and so they're constantly getting hounded, well, why can't you do the online environment? And they actually don't have the processes yet to be able to adopt and do that effectively. And it's a real weight that they're carrying on their back. The next phase, the lull, is where we'll be in some sort of norm. There may be actually a little bit more customer behaviour because the customers will have been through their restrictive period at home, and they may come out because they need to buy new things. But this is the time when you get a chance to actually reflect and see what new systems or systems you've had to adopt. Are they part of where you want to really take your business in future? You know, are there new patterns of customer behaviour? This is where you want to keep your team focused and can improve their skills. So it's opportunity to training and start to think about the recovery phase. And then of course the recovery, I think the key element of any recovery is to make sure you focus on your profitability, consolidate the changes that you've actually put into your business, and make sure that you protect your cash flow so that you can grow your business and start rebuilding your team. But there are three really quite different stages. Do you have any comment, Andrew?
Probably what's important about all these three stages is each different business is going to be in different stages. You've got the people that are shut down. They're really in some ways down the lull phase. And how do they keep their customers re-engaged so that when they do ready to roll and start up again, they've basically got a customer base ready to roll. So whereas a business that doesn't actually need to go to shutdown, it's probably just business as usual, or in some ways, or they've had some slight effect on it. The way they're already still dealing with their customers, but how do they make sure they pick up on any momentum or look at other issues that they can do to where they want to be down that period? Just like the uncertainty phase, some businesses have, had to go do and do all our knee-jerk reaction firefighting, where others have just, all they had to do is change their technology, learn how to use Zoom, learn how to, make sure the computers can work at home, et cetera, et cetera. So every business is different and has got those different things in those different phases that we see and what's happening. And what probably we can't emphasize enough is just once you've got one settled down, you then probably need to be then working on the next phase and working through that period of how, where to, what to do next with our business and re-energize as you're dealing with crises as they pop up with the change in government laws. Just like the announcements we had last night, a decision you made last week to stand staff down could now be different now that you're getting $1,500 a fortnight. How does that now affect you compared to what you were deciding last week to what you would now do tomorrow, etc.?
Some of the smaller businesses that we're dealing with that have either been forced to close, and some of them aren't smaller, just as a matter of interest, have really said that in this phase of the lull until they're allowed to reopen, they're concentrating on how they're going to communicate with their customers. So they are being very active in social media. They're constantly posting stories about what their staff are doing, about new products that they see are going to come along, just engaging and telling the story about their customers. So they're looking at different ways to make sure that they're relevant to their customer base when they have the opportunity coming back. They're not willing to allow no activity from their business because they don't want somebody else to take their customers away. So each business needs to think about what the customer engagement phase is in each one of them, because without customers, our business don't survive. So we've put together a process for people to look at their businesses, and we adopt this process based upon, started off trial and error, but there's a bit of systemizing of what we've been doing, and part of it's part of the handouts that you will receive from today. We look at a basic framework in whether it's a short-term issue, whether it's a long-term issue, whether you're in the lull or whether you're in the recovery, or whether you're just dealing with the day-to-day announcements. We make an assessment and encourage our clients to look about where they are now, but where do they need to get to as a result of this action? Are they forced to put staff on, or are they not? How are they going to go about doing that? Are they allowed to keep their doors open? Are they allowed to have customers in their doors or not? We have the NRMA still operating below us every day. They can only do telephone inquiries, but anybody who comes to the door, they can't allow them in the business. So they're figuring out ways at which they can deal with them. So their now situation is nobody's allowed to access the premises, but what they want to do is continue the service, and they've figured out how they're going to do it and how they can help customers who turn up to the door. So they're finding their way through it, and you've got to apply this methodology for each step. The second part is to develop scenarios. So what's a scenario? A scenario is a situation that you think might happen. And the key to this is to actually describe the event and define it so that it's relevant to what suits your business best, the industry in, and our local environment. So thinking about scenarios that affect people in Sydney aren't relevant to you. And usually what we're saying to people is pick 3 different scenarios. 1, low severity. If nothing happens, what's the minimal impact on your business? What happens if there's a significant impact, a medium severity, or what's going to happen in a severe process? And mapping that out is really clear. And in the handout we've provided, we've given you some tips around how to go through each one of those stages. The thing about scenarios is make sure you fit it into your environment. So there are political influences, legal influences, social impacts. People are now reporting people turning up to businesses if there are too many of them getting out of a car. So the social impact is hard to imagine. So you've got to think about how you can control that. We then identified that there are 9 areas in your survival plan that you've got to look at. The first column, customers, team, and your personal well-being are all about people. And the more we understand our team, how they can help our customers, the more we understand our customers, it's the better for our team as to how they can service them. But equally, we've got to make sure we're looking after our own personal health and well-being. The second stage is about our cash flow, predominantly. How do we make our money, our costs, and our funding? And the last area is about our service. What products and service we're doing, who in our supply chain, how they're going to affect us, and then how do we manage our production and delivery to our customers. So in the sheet that we've provided you, there is a whole series of questions in each category of the 9 steps for you to go through. What we've found with helping clients that are going through the very first phase of high uncertainty, we can't go to a great deal of depth in some of these areas. But once they've got their urgency program or plan worked out, we're then now looking at how do we move to the next phase, and deeper questions and more research and analysis of their client base is proving really fruitful in them developing the right strategy to go forward.
Probably critical there is basically each of these times, and probably where we have the different phases, the 3 phases you move through. The first one is you might do a prelim, and some of these things you're force closes. There's certain sections here that's not relevant, but you then need to, when you sit in the transition stage or that middle stage, you actually then sit down and start working through these of where and what you can do and where you can move forward to. And what David's done here is listed a lot of questions that he's put in there that he's asking in each of these sections, relevant, and really trying to get people to think, look deep and think a little bit broader. And probably we're making knee-jerk reactions today, but in 2 weeks' time, when you actually sit down and think about it a little bit more, some of those knee-jerk reactions will be disappeared. And if you think, you're going broader in what you're thinking and what you're looking at.
So with each of the questions, you've got to ask yourself, what's the issue or the impact or the reaction that may be caused by the coronavirus to these clients, in this particular case, to your customers, and how do I need to react to that, right? If you've got a large customer base, you can't make a personal contact to every single customer. But if you haven't identified who's your highly profitable customers and your key for your future, then you will come up with the wrong strategy going forward as to how you're going to engage with that customer. So, each one of these is prompting you to think more deeply about where you're going. What are the retention risks for your customers? Just looking at some of the questions we've got there. So that's there to help you work your way through what to do, and it'll help you develop different strategies and actions. And I think the action's the really important thing here. What are we going to do, and what are we going to tell our team, and how are we going to deliver it to our customers? So as we're getting close to time, and we want to do questions shortly, where do we see your short-term objectives? I think the very first thing is you've got to protect everybody from the virus. So help flatten the curve, reduce or remove any opportunity of infection on your staff, your customers and your community, because the more responsibility we're seeing with our customers, the easier it is for them to see that, for them to recognise we've got their needs at their best interest. The second part is we've got to keep our business operating. Support from the government's certainly been very helpful for that, but we've got to continue to service customers. We've got to protect our jobs of our staff, and we've got to ensure the financial viability of our businesses. And that financial viability may be that we still make a loss over this time period, but the loss is minimised by our actions. And certainly in the questionnaires that we've provided, there's lots of stuff you can do around your cost structure. And then the third thing is you've got to minimise the financial impact on your assets and reserves. Many businesses are saying, oh, I've got to throw everything I've got at it without going talking to the financiers or their banks about what sort of support they can get, or their landlords. And you just got to make sure that you protect your assets and your business so that you can recover and not throw everything in right now. And I think the key there is lots of people are going to need advice as to what's the right decision going forward. So therefore, your actions for today: develop scenarios for your business, pick the one that's most likely going to impact you in the shorter term, seek some advice to confirm your thinking, talk to customers, talk to your bank, talk to your accountant or advisor, talk to your staff, see what they know is going on for your clients. Prepare budgets, and if you don't normally do a budget, this is a time when you've got to go and talk to your accountant and actually get a budget done so you understand that if this is the scenario, what's that impact of that scenario on your numbers, so you're not jumping at shadows and you can sleep at night knowing that this is what the likely outcome is. Make sure you monitor it and regularly. Figure out how you can figure out what's going on in your business. Do a review every day of the number of transactions or sales transactions done by the business every day. It may not be the value that's important, it's the number of customers that are coming in. Communicate your plan to your staff. You should have staff, financiers and stakeholders. I'm not sure how that fell off. And be prepared to adopt another scenario if conditions change. So if the government changes what you're allowed to do tomorrow, be prepared to jump to the next scenario. And certainly for those guys that have spent a bit of time in scenario planning, they're far better in responding to the needs of their customers. Okay, so to finish off, Andrew, you might deal with the latest funding. If people could start posting questions they might have, we will try and answer those as well.
Yeah, righto. What's all very interesting and all that sort of stuff with all the announcements the governments are making, it's very hard at times to actually get the detail out until the legislation's out. So we're getting a lot of questions. Our phones rang hot today on the funding that was announced last night and how it all works and where it does. What we're seeing with some of that funding, it's going to be great. It's going to support some businesses, but it's also got some cracks in it in relation to, if you're a new business and you've just been running for only 8 months, how's that going to continue? Even if you've got to go into the shutdown phase, how can you get that money in to actually support, look after your employees and that side of it? So there's a lot of things that have come out there, the concept there, the the detail of what's going to be, the overall arching details there. But how we can apply that against individual scenarios at times depends on what some of this further detail is. So we've got to look at this, we've got to see and make decisions based on what we've got with some of that funding and the $1,500 per fortnight. But sometimes some of these details, until we get some of that out, it's going to make it hard. If you think you're going to be affected and be eligible, get on, register, get part of the process. And, get onto the ATO website where there's a registration of it, get on there, and then as more of it comes out. The unfortunate part of some of the funding is, what happens if I actually don't have the money to pay the $1,500 for the next 2 months? How am I going to actually afford that? Can I do that? That's where we need to be talking to the banks, or where we'd like to see a bit more detail come out over the next couple of days from the government. If I don't pay them, but my employees are happy, able to basically, we might give them $200 a week because that's all I can afford. Can I still get my $1,500 in May when that's going to come out and then back pay those employees? There's some things like that that we're trying to look into and find out to help people to go down it. Otherwise, you know, maybe we've got to go to the bank. If we've been working with the bank, got an overdraft, can we say to the employees, look, this is my $1,500 a fortnight that I want to, you know, on staff that I've stood down. Where do I go and how do I do that? Can they fund me the $20,000 that I need? And as the money comes in, it'll go straight in to pay that $20,000 back to the bank. So from an actual, the employer retention of trying to keep the staff and at least keep them engaged with them, that's really where a lot of that funding came last night. There are there's some things there that still come out from the first one or two announcements in relation to the employee withholding and that side of it. On the $1,500 that was announced last night, there's still going to need to be some withholding amounts to go to the employee and be held from those wages. Those withholding amounts also contribute to the amounts that you're actually going to be getting back as an amount back from the government as part of the stimulus package that they 1 and 2 up, which has gone up to $50,000 for the first until June, and then another 50 after June to December in that period. So some of this stimulus money that they've done last night for the retention employees is actually going to assist to get some of the stimulus money from before. But all I can sort of suggest there with a lot of it is very much talk with your accountant and your advisor to help you work through those scenarios, and probably don't assume you can, don't assume that you can't. You really need to make sure that you're looking at the fine detail right in that side of it.
Andrew, would you suggest that people need to really put some urgency around getting their BAS done because the first payments are due later in April?
Basically, if you lodge your BAS returns they're not due to about the 28th of March. I don't think the systems and processes are going to be placed. What they're saying out of the tax office is that they're probably not going to start processing some of those payments until after the 28th. And that money is actually going to go against the integrated client account. And then if there's money there on credit because you haven't paid or your BAS or something like that, that will then be refunded to you. Whereas the stimulus package last night from the employer retention type side, that money, I understand, the reading I've done today, is going to actually, once the ATO starts processing that money is then going to be refunded back to the employer. But where we're seeing some things from our, government, our professional bodies, and that is what happens if you've actually got a debt with the ATO, so that you've got a payment arrangement and extension of time. Are you going to see that $1,500 get paid back to you, or is that going to be applied against your debt that you might have been able to defer? So there's some unknowns about how that's going to come through, and what the tax office's approach is going to be with the regards to that we're still trying to find some detail on. And we've probably got a session the next couple of days with a group that's very much tied in with the tax advisor, that's very much tied in with the government there, that may have some inside running for us to find out that sort of thing with it. Question there from Brendan is, when will those details come out, you think? I'm hoping over the next week we'll see a lot more, especially from some of our professional bodies, to be able to provide us a bit more of the details. So as soon as we can get some of that out, I'm wanting to, we're going to try and distribute that. Everyone that's on here, we can try and distribute that out to everyone as more things are coming along.
I'm going to make a comment. I've had a number of conversations with bankers about how willing they are to support businesses through this period. If you haven't spoken to your banker yet, please do so. They are very accepting of how they can help you. Each business has, depending on your financial ability, access to additional funds through the banking system, of which the government's going to provide 50% security around. So if you feel that you're going to have trouble getting through to retaining your staff until those payments by the end of May, talk to your bankers, because they want to play the game with you and help you.
Also, Sandy is a financial counsellor that's just online. She sent a message through, I think, there to everyone. Should be able to see that there is also the Small Business Financial Counselling Support Line, who can assist from that perspective. In relation to, there's a number there of 1800 413 828 to be able to deal with someone feels they can't afford or can't get that advice. By all means, use those counselling services, financial counselling services that can assist people from a financial perspective of where they need to go. But we often find that we've got to make sure people are getting their strategy right to flow through to the financial, but probably people are also feeling at the moment, I can't afford to pay any advice, my business is just shut down, and these are the ideal services that can go down that route. and that side of it. So, Sandy, there's also probably a cheat sheet. Yes, we're in the process of developing something there that we'll be able to provide to you and be able to probably provide to some of your clients that you will be assisting through that process. And I'll come back to you on the, referral clients. I'll have a discussion to you about all that if we can help out where we can. Links online every day. Yeah, I'll see what I can find. I'm just basically following as much as I can in the news and a few professional bodies that we've got with that coming out. There is the health one. There's also another one. So I'll put some links out that we've been following to Brendan, that way for people to follow, to be able to see where and what that's coming up and what's getting shot out as it comes.
Yeah, we'll send you out a copy of this presentation, and when we do, we'll also attach links to the tax office as well as some of the announcements that have come out. So we'll send you a bit of a package so that you've got the stuff that's coming direct from the government or the tax office in relation.
The government's basically, as they're announcing those things, there's a fact sheet which provides some examples through that, and we'll distribute what fact sheets and that we've got at the moment. But it's really coming up to where else can we find some more detail that's not just in the fact sheet, but really is the questionable side of things as you start applying it to businesses. How does that affect it? And that not, I've had through from farmers asking me, am I eligible for it? And in some of the stimulus package things that they're able to, ascertain and do, yes, the farmers are going to be, but are they going to actually be eligible for the latest funding of the 1,500? My answer is really that's not what that's there for. It's for these businesses that have to be able to keep staff that are affected with their turnovers from, I've got a 30% reduction or I've had to close, for that money to be able to keep staff on board. And probably what's the other thing I wanted to add with it too, and this is where it gets to, is what happens if I've got to put staff off? Am I actually just laying them down, or I'm actually retrenching them and not wanting them anymore? And those things are very complicated process, and you're able to basically stand people down now without pay, but you've got to actually look at the awards and whether you're allowed to do that through your awards, so that you're not actually retrenching them, but they're standing down. And there's a big difference, because if you go and retrench someone, and depending on the size of your company, you may have to be paying redundancies, and you may also have to be then getting lumped with big lump sums to pay their annual leave out and everything at once. Whereas if you can sit down with your staff and say, right, I'll pay your annual leave, you've got 4 weeks annual leave, and then you're going to be leave without pay. Now the $1,500 potentially comes into them to be paid that, but basically they're virtually being stood down. You're then not making any lump sum payments or any amounts of money that you've got to go and pay them 4 weeks notice and all those sorts of things with it. So all I could suggest there's no one right rule for anyone for that. It's all about what works for your business, and really being fully aware of what works, what a financial effect that's going to have on it, and whether you need to go down that route. And even to the question, if I stand someone down and then I want to make them redundant in 6 weeks' time because the business doesn't pick up, how does that work, and how does that get affected?
Without a doubt, this is the most emotional part of the decisions that people have got to face. It's very difficult for people to put people off. But one of the things I've found very empowering for business owners that worked on, individually review every staff member and see, do they actually fit with the business and where we want to go to in the future? And unfortunately for some employees, they're not part of the solution in the long term. And so looking at who you need to exit first is a really critical thing, rather than losing your good employees that are part of your future, because they are living in a world of uncertainty. So being really clear about who's valuable to your business is an absolute piece of gold in making sure that when you build your strategy and who you talk to, that you've got the right approach for the right staff member.
And I probably think another big, and the two big major costs for a lot of businesses is rent and wages. And the other big announcement to see is really what's happening in relation to this rental assistance, or well, I know they're changing, not being able to be kicked out in 6 months and all that, but I think that's going to be very critical in seeing what can happen on that way. Because, if you've got to pay 6 months worth of rent, where do you stand? What's your exposure? How much of it, with the new loans that they've got $250,000 loans that the banks are 50% of it's going to be guaranteed by the government. I'm encouraging people, utilise it if it's there, utilise it if you can use it. what I'm conscious of is people capitalising interest. So depending on your circumstances, if you're fully shut down, you might have many more options bar, capitalise that interest. If you're still trading and you can trade through, just because you think you want to capitalise the interest, it's just basically, you know, it's building a bigger hole for you at the end of the day. So if you can still scrape through and cover off your interest, put your loan repayments on hold, but still pay your interest. And it's sitting down and looking at what your cash flow can do and talking to your bank and say to the bank, right, at the moment, I'm going to try and meet the interest payments. In a week's time, in 6 weeks' time, things don't work out that way. I might have to put that interest payments on hold. And literally, we're talking with a client today, and the banks have, you know, the amount of phone calls they've made in the last 2 weeks, they reckon there's the amount of phone calls they've actually made in the last 12 months in some instances, because they are just run hot with everyone asking where this is all at. So in all this, everything is, people are, we all need things yesterday and we need to answer, but there's going to be a lot of stretch on resources anywhere from the ATO through to the banks to assisting with these. Very, very hard for people to get some answers and get some assistance at times. So the sooner you can probably jump in and get some of this happening, or at least be in the pipeline with it, the more I recommend that, you know, jump in and do it. Even if it's just touching base with your manager and saying, this is what I'm thinking, I'll come back to you in a week's time. What are your thoughts on it? So that you know that you're working in the right direction.
Guys, we've been going for 45 minutes now. Can we get the last questions up? So we're happy to keep on and keep answering questions for you. If you need to go, please do.
Yep, there's one there now. Any thoughts on how the ATO will ask to see the 30% downturn to be eligible for JobKeeper claim? Will it be averaged or over a full financial year or based on the previous quarter? The commentary that's come out of there is they'll basically say, was your March month last year 30% down? I think what's going to come about it is basically sometimes that may not actually be the case. You might have an initial jump. Everyone might have jumped in and bought your product. Therefore, you're not 30% down for this month, but next month you're going to be 30% down. I'd say next month you're definitely going to be eligible, but is the government going to then backdate you and say you're eligible from the 1st of March? That is the detail, and that's the hard part. I think a little bit of common sense should come into it. It doesn't mean it is. It very much, we're getting the messages out from our professional bodies through the government, is they're not wanting accountants to be out there promoting schemes, to be making things set up so that you can get all this funding if you're not really eligible to do it. So I think it's really trying to keep that ethical stance, try and do the right things, show that, yes, you know, we might have said that our March last year was up, but if we actually showed them for the 3 months, our average turnover for that period is normally X, Y, Z, we're at this level this month and here's our predictions. I'm sure they're going to sit down and contemplate that. They're wanting to basically keep employers paying employees, whether they're still working. They don't want the employees in Centrelink. And this is where it's all coming from, is they don't want to put them on the Job Starter program. They want them to be on the JobKeeper program. So the main benefit of having it through the employer is that they probably are dealing with less people by dealing through the ATO with the employer than what they are with the employees dealing direct with Centrelink. So I think if businesses are affected and they see that side of it coming through, they're going to be encouraging for that to come, you know, to continue to make sure people are eligible from that side of it.
Brenda's got a question there about, besides the above, SMEs, what else can we take advantage of? I think one of the things about looking at different scenarios is sometimes we forget to look at where we could potentially generate new income streams. Or how we can change our product or service that actually can find a new direction for our business. So yes, we can go through every item in your P&L and try and look at reducing the costs. Certainly landlords, loan repayments, equipment finance repayments, all of those can be deferred. Your staff can be, you can approach them and stand them down and talk to them about how they'd like to get paid and whether you can afford that. There's the loans. Yes, they're all different things you do. You can actually review your systems and processes and remove some of the hidden inefficiencies in your business, where it might reduce your electricity costs. Going to your service providers like Essential Energy, Telstra, all of those guys, they're all willing to listen. They all want to get paid. They're willing to make concessions about what you can do. I think sometimes we've got to look beyond those cost-saving messages and saying, can we connect with that? Where do we actually add value to them? And can we re-engage them? Because there's a lot of customer loyalty out there. People want to support local businesses. And Buy for the Bush through the drought has been an absolute raging success. And I think if you create a community with your customers, it's amazing what you'll be able to achieve.
The other stimulus stuff that's out there is also just in relation to apprentices and trainees, where they're getting paid, subsidised for businesses that are continuing 50% of their 50% up to about 20,000 over a 9-month period. Even if you might shut down for 2 months, it might be a period there where that still be eligible when you're up and running again to be able to obtain that. One of the first, I think, silly announcements the government was the $150,000 capital spend. If you go and spend $100,000 on a capital item, that's immediately tax deduction, and then there's some accelerated depreciation for that. The problem is, a lot of the businesses that this is greatly affecting and need the stimulus is not wanting to spend the money. But I know the government was trying to hope people would go and spend some money to create activity. But I think really the back end of this stimulus package we're seeing at the moment is about jobs and money for people and just keeping people rolling along. I think at the back end of it, when we're starting to come out of it, we're going to see a different stimulus package where I think we're going to see that push for expenditure and government infrastructure builds further and bring forward of projects to really try and keep the economy with actual projects where now people can get out and start, living and operating again normally with that side of it. Is there a financial assistance for sole traders? Yes, there is. This $1,500 is there now for the sole traders. There's some other information which I'll distribute, another briefing that came out this afternoon for sole traders and what they're eligible for, but definitely eligible for that $1,500 should they have that turnover criteria being met in that side of it. But where I'm also struggling is what's the difference to a sole trader to a partnership? You're in a partnership, you're not actually paying wages to yourself, you're just taking out drawings, which is no different to a sole trader. How does a partnership get, from my perspective, they should have the same opportunity to that $1,500 if their business has totally been cut to be able to continue that for themselves as individuals, which is where the sole trader money is getting put in that side. So there's a few things there that are gradually coming out, and I know there's been a big call out about the sole traders. That there was some information put out there today from that side of it. If anyone's got anything else, please ask. But yes, we'll send out the slides, and we'll put together the packages of some of this information, especially this stimulus information, so that people have got some reference or some reading to do. All we can encourage people to do is over time, sit down, look at those stimulus, what you can do and how they can affect your business. But really that's got to be taken in, those things are taken in line with what are you going to do with your business, how you're going to manage it, what are your strategies. Yes, we've got some immediate knee-jerk reactions we've got to do, but as soon as you can deal with those matters, where are we going, and then what are we going to do through this period where we talked about the lull period, and then can we thrive in that lull period, or is it just managing to get to a break-even level or a small loss level that we've got enough cash resources to fund through? If we don't, well, what other harder decisions do we need to do? And then coming back out of that, how am I going to prosper? Are people's habits going to change? Are we going to do life differently now when we come back out the other side? And we don't know the answers to that. No one does. It depends on how long this is for. And, are we going to go through a period where we can start trading again, and then we're going to come back and the government, we've had another outbreak and the government's going to shut down? They're the unknowns, and they're the things we've got to continue managing with.
Okay, so as part of, just to wrap up today, thank you everybody for attending. I hope you found this valuable. We are providing every one of you a free consultation. So you either ring Andrew and I, the numbers are on the presentation that you get sent out. Please use it. It is a genuine free offer to help you, because we've got lots of clients who we've spoken to. If you haven't had anybody to talk to, you're more than welcome to do that. If you can't get us on our mobiles, ring the office and talk to Fiona, or send us an email at solutions@buy businessdna.digital. Anyway, thank you very much. I hope this has been helpful and we look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thanks all.